Magi, The Adventures of Sinbad. The day Sinbad was born, all the other Magis felt his presence. Fast forward 3 years, and his father had come back from war with just one foot. Partevia, his country, seeks to repay him, but he tells them to give it to the drunks. He goes fishing, but his son, Sinbad, has snuck his way onto the canoe. A storm later hits, and the little boy guides his father through the waves. One day, Sinbad and his father are dining by the sea, and some villagers come to accuse him of not joining the war. They beat him up in front of his son, and when he awakes, Sinbad calls him uncool and runs away. Later that night, Sinbad goes to fetch water and finds a man named Darius badly injured. They help save him, and he thanks Sinbad amidst tears. Darius ends up staying with them to recover, and at that night, he tells Sinbad of his different adventures around the world. Some days pass, and he prepares to leave, only for soldiers to come in search of an enemy spy. Darius gets furious and kills the soldiers. He then uses Sinbad as a hostage. None of the villagers give a helping hand, and so Sinbad's father has to kill Darius himself. After much debate, Sinbad's father agrees to go to war. He tells Sinbad to care for his mother, and just 2 months later, news comes of his death. 9 years have passed, and Sinbad is now 14. An unknown structure arises between Partevia and Riem. Everyone calls it a dungeon, and over 10,000 people have tried to conquer it, but died in the process. Present day, and deserters try to attack a merchant. Sinbad arrives just in time and easily defeats all of them. He then asks for a job as their protector, as he's popular with the ladies, but they offer him fresh fruit instead. Upon opening a barrel, they find a wizard named Yunan cramped inside it. Sinbad takes Yunan to Tyson, his hometown, where he's loved by all the kids and praised by the elderly. They get home, and his sick mother tries helping out, but he makes her lie back down. Dragul gets sent to the edges of Partevia. The next morning, Sinbad goes out early, leaving breakfast for Yunan. After leaving, Yunan and Esra, Sinbad's mother, get talking, and she makes him promise to lead Sinbad down the right path. News comes of Sinbad being apprehended. Apparently, Dragul had come for military recruitment. They beat Sinbad up and tell him that Partevia must conquer the dungeon, so they need all the manpower. Afterwards, Yunan convinces Sinbad to take on the dungeon, and he disappears shortly after. He doesn't have to tell his mother before she notices and hands him his father's weapons as a blessing. The next day, Sinbad misses a roll call but comes to declare before Dragul that he will get the dungeon's power before him. He meets Yunan at the entrance, and he bids him well. Dragul and his army get picked off one after the other by baby dragons, so much that Sinbad has to save his life. They bicker and fight over duty and class, and they come across a huge white dragon. The fight makes them split up, and Dragul goes for the gate. This alerts the dragon, and it prepares to attack. Sinbad saves him again and takes the beast head-on, using flowing geysers, a shield, and his father's sword. He locates the dragon's weak point and stabs it in between the eyes. 2 orbs come from the beast, and Sinbad and Dragul use them to open the gates. After some more battles, they arrive at the treasure room. There, Sinbad activates Baal, a djinn, by touching his lamp. Dragul refuses to let Sinbad have it, and so they fight for who will wield the power. Sinbad continues to beat down Dragul, but he stands up again and again. Finally, Sinbad knocks him out and takes Baal for himself. Yunan helps activate this power when the soldiers come for Sinbad's riches. Unfortunately, when he gets home, his mother is near death. She gives him endearing words as she passes them on. Sinbad becomes popular amongst the people, but hated by royalty. Hina and Piparika hunt down a sea monster for Hina to kill. It overturns their canoe, and Piparika begins to drown. Hina tries his best but cannot kill it. The monster gets defeated thanks to Sinbad. Dragul and a covert group of assassins pursue Sinbad to the north under the orders of Partevia. Piparika regains consciousness and immediately celebrates her brother killing the beast, as it is an Imuchak tradition to become a warrior that way. Sinbad keeps quiet about being the real conqueror and follows them to their village. Although the chief is their father, he finds it difficult to let Sinbad in. This changes when he later discovers that Sinbad has cleared a dungeon just like the one that has appeared near their village. They celebrate Maharagan, and while Sinbad sleeps, an assassin tries to kill him, but he's just a child. He quickly apprehends the boy and slaps him across the face when he gets rude. The boy manages to escape. Meanwhile, Hina runs off to conquer the dungeon by himself, and Sinbad follows behind him, promising Piparica that he'll come back alive. Hina arrives inside the dungeon and gets welcomed by man-eating butterflies, which he defeats by going underwater. He fights them off, only for him to meet with the king crab wielding the key to the gate. Unfortunately, Dragul and his assassins, Vidal, Mahan, and Jafar, along with Fallon, his sorceress, interfere with the battle. Sinbad comes in time to stop Vidal and Mahan's attacks. He reunites with Draken, whom he fondly calls Dragul, and Jafar tries attacking him. Sinbad puts him in his place and escapes with Hina underwater. The sorceress freezes the whole lake, but they manage to get out in time. She shares healing potions for the assassins before Dragul opens the gates. He awakens a djinn named Valifor, and it immediately notices Fallon as a dirty creature. He consumes her essence, leaving her as a doll. Meanwhile, she actually answers to Barbarossa. When Hina and Sinbad finally join them, Valifor postulates a challenge, telling them to catch Minifer, his cat double, before time runs out. They chase and chase until Sinbad gets them to cooperate, telling them to hurdle around the animal and that he'll forfeit his spot. He gives the signal, and they all jump at the cat, but immediately it jumps, and Sinbad catches it. Afterwards, he gives a heartwarming speech on why he should be king, only to be interrupted by Black Rook pouring out of the assassins until all three of them merge into a beast. Sinbad is hell-bent on saving them, but the others are not. After he gets flung to the wall, Valifor explains that they're all tied to the beast's core, and if Sinbad can destroy the core, they'll be saved. Just then, Fallon reappears, stealing Ball from Sinbad. Barbarossa then sends words of disappointment to his brother, Dragul, banishing him from his life. Hina saves Draken, but in turn, he gets strangled. Sinbad jumps in, and this motivates Hina to break free. Draken joins Sinbad in the fight, keeping the monster busy as Hina charges up his staff. He then uses it to destroy the monster's core, releasing all three assassins. Sinbad retrieves his sword, and Jafar becomes the sole core of the beast. Sinbad dips his hand into the core and talks to Jafar's consciousness. He uses Ball's lightning on himself and Jafar, bringing the boy back to life. Everyone agrees to let Sinbad be king, and Valifor surrenders to him. As they return to the surface, Draken seeks to leave, and Valifor then blesses him with a household vessel. At the coming-of-age ceremony, Hina's name changes to Hina Ho-Ho, and he tells his father his plan to join Sinbad. He later stops by to ask Rurumu's father for her hand in marriage. He agrees, and Sinbad obtains a ship with which they start Sindria's trade as a crew. Rurumu strictly imparts etiquette to Jafar and Sinbad, breaking their spirits day after day till they arrive at the Rayim Empire. Sinbad is excited as they set up shop. He mesmerizes the ladies, and they buy his goods. Rayim soldiers came to shut them down for not having licenses from the association. A trader named Heron buys all the goods from them, only to open a similar shop for 10 times the price. Sinbad encourages his team and sends them to go home and restock while he handles the registration. He then meets up with Heron, and they discuss Sinbad's dream to change the world. Heron gives him a manchang, gathers 1,000 gold coins, and promises to recommend him to the association. Sinbad racks his brain, and a month later, he's telling the whole town his mesmerizing dungeon tales. They throw coins at him afterwards, and he approaches Heron in the crowd. He gives Sinbad the whole amount and tells him to pursue his dream. Apparently, Heron is actually Rashid, the king of Balbad. On the ship, Rurumu manages to tell Jafar that he has to improve for his master. She then breaks the news of her incoming child. Rashid and Sinbad share a drink, and the king advises him to brace up and perform his dungeon tales in the theater. Hina Ho-Ho and Rurumu have welcomed Kikiriku, their son. They leave him in Jafar's care. Sinbad took King Rashid's advice and put on such an entertaining show that people returned the next day for more. He sees the Colosseum on their way back and promises to use it for his next show. When Hina-Ho-Ho and the rest of the team arrive at Raim, they're led directly to the Colosseum. As they watch Sinbad's performance, Kikiriku goes missing, and Jafar finds him in the hands of a Colosseum monster. He fights this beast with all his heart, finally killing it with Balls Lightning. Afterwards, Sinbad reveals a lavish trade center, and thanks to Rashid once again, Sinbad, Hina-Ho-Ho, and Jafar arrive at the kingdom of Sasan, the metal capital of the world. They left Mayhan, Vidal, and Rurumu to take care of things in Raim. They're not well received, so they visit the public attendant, who tells them that Sasan isn't interested in trading of any sort and only gives their metal to friends. He suggests that Sinbad befriend the Holy Knights, and he tries day after day, but no one answers him. He then meets Mistress, son of the Night King Darius, who's curious about foreigners. They feed him, and he explains that he would like to see the world. Sinbad puts on a show for him, and he goes home convinced. He tries sneaking out, but his father catches him and slaps him in front of Spardos, his younger brother. Spardos later comes to beg Mistress to stay, but this strengthens his resolve. Mistress sends him back to tell his father that he's officially leaving the Knights. Yunin checks in with Sinbad and informs him that there are now other dungeon capturers. Meanwhile, Mistress successfully defeats every knight except his father. It gets worse when Darius awakens his djinn. He beats his son, but as he's about to behead him, Sinbad interrupts him, challenging Darius to a duel. He put up Mistress and a trade agreement as his loot from battle. They clash swords, and Sinbad attacks with lightning, all to no avail. He then activates his full-body djinn equip, and with this much power, blows a hole in the roof of the building. He flies away with Darius and destroys a third of a mountain to prove his strength. He then negotiates for an alliance, amongst other things. They're already getting impatient back in town, but Darius and Sinbad return just in time to stop the ruckus. Darius endorses Sinbad as God sent, and all the knights follow suit. Mistress shares beautiful moments with both his father and brother, respectively, and gets excited to finally leave the country, even if it's to a small matriarchal nation. They arrive at Artemyra, the city of the sky, where two girls from the country playfully tell them that they'll never make it to town through the valley. Indeed, the journey through the valley is so tough that Sinbad needs to be dragged at some point. By the time they arrive, everyone stinks, but there aren't any inns because Artemyrans never get visitors. They perform an ablution and face the queen, or so they thought. Mira Diana's Artemina had placed a doll on the throne as a cautionary double. She claims she's not interested in talking to men, and Sinbad tries seducing her. He fails, and she strips him and his team of their clothes and vessels. They push them down the mountain, and they use leaves as clothes. After much suffering, they begin to feed on snakes and even build a house out of vegetation. Everyone except Mistress seems okay with the way things are going. He wonders why they lost sight of their mission to get back to the surface. They dismiss him, and he goes searching the area and comes back with processed meat the next morning. Instead of Jafar and Sinbad using it for clues, they go straight to roasting it. Sinbad even sees precious stones on the meat and throws them away. He then asks Mistress to show him where he'd found the meat, and upon reaching there, he begins to load up on them. Mistra watches helplessly, but Jafar tells him to have faith in Sinbad. The size of the meat increases over time, and one day, Sinbad, Jafar, and Mistress hide inside the meat as huge birds pick them up to the surface. Sinbad visits the queen's private quarters and retrieves his djinn vessels. She then challenges him to a duel, and both use full-body djinn equipment. The queen wields a 3-in-1 djinn with ice, water, and fire abilities, while Sinbad starts off with Balls Lightning. They're equally matched until Sinbad switches to Valiforce power. He suddenly became faster than her, but in reality, he'd made her slower. He then encapsulates her in a block of ice. The queen later summons them to the palace, where Sinbad tells her of his plan to create an alliance that will stop world wars entirely. She is skeptical, but finally agrees to Sinbad's terms. They get Hina-Ho-Ho back. He's loved by the country girls so much that he's suspicious. Parcine Pratemia joins the crew as a diplomat for Artemira. The queen comes by the port to see them off and introduces all her daughters to Sinbad. There, he meets Pisti, the youngest. Their voyage back to Raim is swift, and Sinbad asks after Rurumu. She's not around, so he checks in on Vidal and makes him prepare a banquet. There, he introduces Parcine and Mistress to his people, and they toast to an ideal future. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more amazing content.